Texas public schools are more than just buildings, more than an institution. Wherever teaching and learning take place, we must stand together with our public schools because a strong Texas recovery requires strong public schools.
Hi, I'm Cassi Pollock, politics reporter for the Texas Tribune. Thank you for tuning in for our conversation on the House agenda as part of the Texas Tribune symposium previewing the 2021 legislative session. I'm joined today by state representatives for Price, Toni Rose, Craig Goldman, and Terry Canales. Representative Price, an Amarillo Republican, has represented House District 87 since 2011. He serves as chair of the House Calendars Committee and sits on the Natural Resources, Public Health, and Redistricting Committees. Representative Rose, a Dallas Democrat, has represented House District 110 since 2013. She sits on the House Appropriations, Calendars, Human Services, and Redistricting Committees. Rose also serves as second vice chair of the Texas House Democratic Caucus and is a member of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus. Representative Goldman, a Fort Worth Republican, has represented House District 97 since 2013. He serves as vice chair of the House Licensing and Administrative Procedures Committee and sits on the Calendars and Transportation Committees. Representative Canales, an Edinburgh Democrat, has represented House District 40 since 2013. He serves as chair of the House Transportation Committee and sits on the Land and Resource Management Committee. Let's get started. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And let's start off with a question to you, Representative Goldman, about whether the November elections everyone just went through impacts any sort of dynamic heading into what members say will be one of the toughest legislative sessions in years. You were in somewhat of a heated re-election contest this past November. We saw heated contests across the board, of course, as Democrats tried to flip enough seats to gain control of the House. But of course, that didn't happen. And in fact, we'll have the same 83-67 split between Republicans and Democrats from 2019. My question for you is, how can the House come together and get business done? Work on redistricting, the budget, a response to the pandemic, after a number of relationships were fractured over the election?
Well, Cassi, thanks for the question. How can we come together? Very simply, we have to come together. I mean, the campaigns are in the past, and now we legislate, and that's the role as members. You turn from candidate into legislature, and so it's up to the 150 of us to come together for the betterment of Texas. We're going to have a $4 to $5 billion budget deficit that we have to balance the budget on. We have redistricting, of course, that we have to do. And there are other major issues, in my opinion, like health and human services that we have to find some long-term solution on. Since Toni and Terry and I are all classmates, since we've come in, we've solved the long-term water problem. We've solved the long-term transportation problem. In my opinion, health and human services is what's next. And so I look forward to coming into this next session with those major issues in mind, that we have to come together and solve those problems for the betterment of the people, of the 29 million people in Texas.
Do the other three members on this panel agree with Representative Goldman's assessment on everyone more or less having to come together just for the sake of getting business done?
Absolutely.
I do.
When the election is over with, it's time to govern.
Yeah. Well, Representative Rose, one of the other things that we're walking into is a new speaker. I'm going to want every member to answer this question, but first, this one's to you, Representative Rose. Dave Phelan, Beaumont Republican, is the next likely speaker of the Texas House. What role do you see yourself playing next session, and what are you asking for from likely Speaker Phelan in terms of committee assignments?
Well, Cassi, my number one role is to continue working and supporting issues that impact and improve my district. So that's my number one role. And, since I've been became a member of the Texas House, I've, worked very hard, and I've been afforded some great opportunities as it relates to my committee assignments. And so, however, I'm ready to bloom wherever I'm planted. So.
I like that. Let's go to you next, Representative Canales, just in terms of committee assignments and what role you want to play position-wise next session.
Last session I was appointed to the chair of transportation, and we've spent a great deal in my office, spent a great deal delving into the transportation issues that affect, including financing and how we're going to move forward as a state. That being said, because I've spent that much time, I believe that it's probably a good place for me. But the reality is, wherever the speaker needs us to be, and his team believe that we would best serve the membership, that's where I want to be. I want to be part of the solution, and that means assisting the speaker in how he apportions us among the committees, and he believes that will best serve the membership. That's the goal, is to make the body work.
How about you, Representative Price?
I agree with Terry. What an incredibly difficult job the speaker has to place, all the members in their capacities on different committees, and deciding who will chair them, and making sure there's representation from the state and demographic representation and things of that nature. So it's a really difficult job. So I obviously will go wherever the speaker feels like I can be most beneficial to the body. And I think I've had committee assignments in the past that I didn't expect, and some that I asked for, and no matter which ones I have been on or had the opportunity to chair, it's been an area where you can make an impact, and certainly not just for the folks you represent in your respective districts, or in my district in particular, but for the folks that live in the state of Texas. I think
Right.
There's plenty of opportunities out there, and I'm looking forward to that. But it's going to be a difficult job for the speaker. I know that that's a real challenge for every speaker when they take office, to make those decisions. So looking forward to it, and certainly we'll do the best I'm sure we all can, wherever we end up.
You, Representative Goldman, thoughts?
I find it quite unique that two of my three chairmen are on this call. Chairman Canales did a terrific job as chairman of transportation, and Chairman Price did a wonderful job as chairman of calendars. I certainly enjoy being on those committee, as well as the licensing committee. But like the others have said, we serve at the pleasure of the speaker where we go committee wise. And like Toni said earlier, our opponents sure would like our committee assignment. So pretty much everybody is honored to serve, honored to be on committees, and no matter what committee you're on, everybody can make a difference, even if you're not on a particular committee in the Texas State House. So that's the benefit.
Right. I have one logistical question about how things are expected to operate at the Capitol, and then we'll kind of dive into some of the priorities that are expected to take center stage during session. And Representative Canales, I'm going to toss this one to you first. And again, whoever wants to answer after him, please feel free to. There's so much that we still don't know about what sorts of pandemic-related protocols are going to be passed or put into place at the Capitol. But one thing that we do know is that members have their own discretion when it comes to their own offices and staff. Already, I think Representative John Rosenthal has issued some guidance for his office. Other members have taken similar approaches. How are you planning to run your office during session?
So I'm in a unique situation. My office is on the fourth floor of the Capitol, and I almost have, it's kind of like a suite. There's a huge common area, and it'll be me, Representative Krause, and Representative Rodriguez. And so that common area is kind of a challenge. So we've already started communicating, just working with the chair of House Administration is going to be key, and keeping the members of my staff safe. And the reality is this, as we don't know exactly how it's going to unfold, the way the House is going to function until the rules are passed. But I think common sense is just should be our guidance. My staff's going to wear masks. We're going to have plenty of hand sanitizers. We're going to social distance. We're going to do all the things we've been hearing about since we've been inundated with the pandemic. And the reality is, we've got to do our best. We've got to be socially conscious, and we've got to balance the right of the people to be in the people's house with the health concerns that we're facing. And so taking that all into account, I think that every member has the right, like you said, to govern their office in the way they see fit. And I just think I'm going to follow a common sense approach, and I think most members are too.
Yeah, I'll jump in there, Cassi. I think that's exactly right. And I think the situation's fluid, and we'll react to it. And I think everybody that I know, most members will certainly operate their own respective offices in a way that makes sense and keeps staff and visitors safe. I think, we'll make sure there's plenty of protective equipment. In some cases, some staff who wants them will receive, glass on their desk to provide a barrier when requested. And I know the House administration has already indicated there will be air filters, HEPA air filters in the chambers and the committee rooms and throughout the Capitol. And so there will be lots of precautions taken. I think, our office will remain open to whomever wants to come in. I'm sure we'll try to schedule it so that we're never combining a lot of people in a confined space at one time. And then, I don't doubt, for instance, my district, my home is 500 miles away from the Capitol. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. People decided to use a lot more technology like this and conduct a lot more of their meetings over Zoom or something similar instead of making those travels like they might normally do. But I think most members will have, an open door and just be as safe as common sense dictates and as we need to be.
I represent a district that was heavily impacted by it, and I've seen the devastation that it has caused. And so it has really heightened my I guess I don't want to say setting off an alarm, but it has really, it's at the forefront of my conscience, I should say. And so therefore, I want to make sure that my staff, currently, we already have protocols in place, and the staff that I have here in the district will also be a part of my staff in the Capitol. And so, as I stated, we've already put protocols into place. But as far as I'm concerned, everybody has COVID and they will be treated as if they have COVID, because it's, like I said, I've seen the devastation that it has caused and the impact that it has had on families in my district. And so I just want to make sure myself, as well as everyone in the Capitol, I hope that everyone remains safe. And that's going to be my prayer throughout the entire legislative session.
Thank you, Rep. Rep. Goldman, I'm going to give you an opportunity just because that could, round out this answer for everyone before we move on.
Yeah,
to
sure.
redistricting.
Very quickly, I agree with all the other three members and their comments. I think that just the over of this is most members, as far at least every single member I've talked to, as long as we're there, the Capitol should be open to the people of Texas to be able to come in and speak to us. And so just as long as we do safely, and I know that Presumptive Speaker Phelan and his team are putting in all the precautions in place in order for that to happen. I'm pretty sure that's we all are in agreement that that's what we want to happen.
Right. Thank you, Rep. Let's talk about redistricting, redrawing the state's political maps. Representative Price, you were here during the last redistricting round in 2011. So my question to you is, you can run us through all the different caveats. I know there's a question about when the legislature may be receiving census data, which of course is needed to draw those maps. But I would just love to get your take on what are you expecting to happen this time around with this redistricting process that the legislature is about to undergo?
Well, the whole process is a challenging process under any set of circumstances. And this one could be delayed a little bit due to the fact that the Census Bureau is pushed back its own deadlines and certainly has presented or suggested proposals for releasing that data to the states at a later date than would normally be the case. So I think this session we should expect it to be as challenging as it normally would be under any set of circumstances. It's crazy to think that it's not contentious at some moments, because inherently, when you're drawing maps that affect the State Board of Education, House and Senate districts and congressional districts, at some level, at some point along the way, it can become, controversial or personal to many of the members in both chambers. So it's a really tough process to go through. And if we are to receive the data that we need to finalize bills, these redistricting proposals go through the process just like any other bill. It could present some time pressure that is already existing under the best of circumstances. Certainly could be more amplified, I guess, this session. If we don't get if we don't receive that data before the end of the regular session, it sets up for a special, very likely a special to address it. So I mean, it's it's a difficult process to go through, and it sucks a lot of oxygen out of the room when you start down that road. And certainly there's been a lot of progress made, receiving feedback from the House committee, and we traveled. I think we had 15 hearings, scheduled 28, and had to stop holding them in March. But
Right.
We have good estimates in the demographer's office and Ledge Council, and everybody that's involved has already established a lot of information that can be utilized to start analyzing the information and doing the best we can to prepare for what we ultimately receive from the federal government. And it's just a tough process to go through. There's no easy way to state it other than just recognize it and work through it and do the best we can. And I think we'll get the job done. It's just challenging.
Right. Reps Goldman, Rose, Canales, I'd love to hear your thoughts just in terms of this being the first redistricting process that you as a member will be going through. And, given the unique set of circumstances that we're in, I mean, how much are you expecting the process to take up from the other list of challenges and priorities from both parties? Whoever wants to take that first, please.
I'll be
I guess
very
I'll
simple.
talk a bit about. Go ahead, Craig. You've got seniority.
Everyone can answer.
Go ahead, Toni.
No, I was just going to say, actually, I know this is the first full process, but in 2013, we did handle some redistricting. And in fact, I was the only Democrat who was able to get an amendment passed. I just want that to be said for the record, and was able to get an amendment passed. And so we did have a little taste of it, but again, we know it's going to be challenging. But I think, one of the things that I'm really hoping, I think since I've been in the legislature or in the Texas House, we've had great working relationships. And it's my hope that we will continue to be able to, try to work through it. The legislature has changed. I mean, the House has changed a lot since 2011. And so hopefully we'll be able to work out those issues. The only time I think we really have problems is when it comes to resources, and they're limited. And so hopefully we'll come together and, just work through those issues.
You're up, Craig.
Well, I'll be very brief. Chairman Price is, like he said, is the only one of us that's been through a full redistricting, despite Toni's successes in passing an amendment. All I know is I've been told expect the unexpected, so that's what we'll do. We'll totally expect the unexpected and look forward to going through the process. But to Toni's point also, there are of the 150 members, about 110 of them have only been there 5 terms or less. So there's
Right.
been major turnover in the last decade. So like everyone said, there's a lot more people who haven't been through the process of redistricting than who have.
So from my perspective, most of what we hear that haven't been through the process is anecdotal. And so the reality is people like me and Toni, we've been in the minority since we've gotten there. So we know exactly where we sit. But me in particular, my region of Texas isn't highly redistricted, if not but for our members. And so I think the fight won't actually be a partisan fight rather than a delegation fight when it comes to how we draw our lines because of the way we sit in South Texas. And so it's not as big a concern for South Texas members as it is for, folks up north, because those lines start to push, right, left, north and south, east, west, north and south. And so, but the reality is, I think that the people of Texas just want fair districts where they're equally represented and they have a voice. And so I think that should be every member's goal. Unfortunately, sometimes that falls by the wayside with politics, but the goal is that everybody should have a chance to have input. And and I think that we will all have a seat at the table. The question is where your seat is. It could be at the front. It could be at the back.
Yeah. Thank you, all 4 of you. We're going to turn to an audience question or two, and then we'll be wrapping up. This question is actually from Tracy, and the question is, how will we maintain the increase in funding to public schools that came out of last session through House Bill 3? For those watching, House Bill 3 was a landmark school finance reform bill that received bipartisan support and overwhelmingly passed the legislature, was signed into law. whichever member feels like they would like to perhaps offer some insight as to this long-term funding source for HB3, please take it away from here.
I'll just have a brief input. For the reality is that a $4 billion deficit, all the numbers big, is not insurmountable. It's not something that we can't get past to keep the status quo. I'm highly optimistic we're going to be able to keep the changes that we've done that we all worked so hard for. And you're going to watch the House and the Senate, I believe, rally behind those changes to make sure that we get to keep our word to our schools, our teachers, and everybody else. And I think we'll be able to get around it. I don't think it's as dismal as we thought it was going to be. And so going into it, I think that everybody's going to fight to keep the progress that we've made.
One more audience question. Apologies if I mispronounce the name here. Marique is asking, let me read out the question and then I'll perhaps retail it just a bit. Her question is, why has the legislature failed to expend Medicaid year after year while Texas has the highest rate of uninsured in the country? So maybe let's reframe this a little bit. Medicaid expansion has, of course, been a talking point for Democrats who have been in the minority in the legislature, the minority party in the legislature. Representative Goldman, Price, I mean, whoever wants to take this, do you think that just given the current set of circumstances that we're in with the pandemic, that there's maybe some sort of a renewed push or a new push entirely just to maybe start a conversation on expanding Medicaid among Republicans? Whoever would like to answer that, please.
Well, I'll jump in.
I'll defer to the former chairman of Health.
I think the biggest concern that has been expressed, I think, in the past and even currently with the expansion, especially a full expansion, as sometimes it is described as or contemplated, is the cost and how it would be paid for. Just like your previous audience question regarding how do you come up with enough general revenue to fund public schools the way we aggressively and transformatively changed it last session? How would you find a sustainable financing stream to pay for Medicaid expansion in the future, especially with a declining match from the federal government, which started off at 90% and would go down to 0% over the next decade? And if that were the case, I don't really have a good answer for that. And I think that's just been the concern. It's not that there's an ignorance of the high rate of uninsured, and certainly I think options should be discussed about creative Texas plans and health care improvement plans that could be specifically tailored, maybe more narrowly tailored to Texas needs. Other states have done some similar things creatively. And so I wouldn't doubt that those options would be proposed and discussed as well. But a full-blown expansion, the way it's sometimes contemplated, sometimes can sound better than it financially presents, because it would be very difficult to understand how those billions of dollars in federal matches that are described as being left on the table could be supplanted with general revenue just a few years down the road. So I think that's the biggest challenge, is trying to figure out how those dollars can be, generated and used. But if we can figure out ways to, do that and reduce the uninsured in Texas, I think, most folks would agree that that would be a very good thing for us.
Thank you, Rep. We are almost out of time here, but when I was touching base with all of you earlier this week, I said I wanted to try to end things on somewhat of a quote unquote fun note. I don't know how fun of an answer this will produce, but I did want to get everyone's take on how long you think the legislature will be in town next year. Of course, there's so much up in the air. I believe Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick earlier this year had suggested that he had told his staff, please don't plan any vacations through the end of September. If you're feeling bold enough to give me a month prediction, I will happily take it. And please, let's just start with you, Representative Canales. We will make sure that all 4 members weigh in.
I won't tell you when it'll end, but I'll tell you it probably starts around February.
I don't know if I should accept that as an answer, Rep.
I think we'll definitely have a special. I think that there's some people up for re-election that are going to need to energize their base, and the reality is that's historically been the tool used. And so we'll be back. How many times I don't know. And if they continue to push these census numbers back, that's going to dictate as to at least one of the specials. And so what month that is, we're seeing some people are predicting July, and so it's as good as anybody's guess. But I can tell you that if my money's on, there's a special that involves something other than redistricting and has a lot of red meat to it.
I hear you. Representative Rose, let's go to you next, and then we'll hit Representative Price and Goldman after that.
Well, I would just like to say that that's so unfortunate. Terry's comments, I would hope not. I would hope to be able to be over in Punta Cana by August or July sometime to digress from the legislative session. But I definitely do believe that there will be special sessions. They're talking about the census information coming in around April, but so I know there's no way we'll probably be able to get anything or come to some type of, I mentioned earlier that we need to have common ground, but I doubt if it'll be done before sine die. So we will definitely have at least one special session.
Cassie, we may be able to pass rules that allow Representative Rose to vote from Punta Cana.
I'm sure a majority of the chamber would be willing to get behind that. Representative Price, your estimate?
But for redistricting, I think we'd be fully capable of getting all the work done and getting out of there on time. I do think that presents a significant, challenge to us, given the pandemic and the current state of affairs with the Census Bureau. So I think if we got the numbers for apportionment purposes and map drawing purposes by May, I think we could possibly still get it done. But if we don't, if it's later than that, I would push it back and say by the end of June.
Okay, thank you. Last but not least, Representative Goldman.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with Chairman Price in that it's all going to depend on the census data. We'll be able to get the work done for the people of Texas as far as a regular session, but so depending on when we get the census results back, that will determine whether or not there's a special session for redistricting, and that'd be the only reason that call a special session, in my opinion.
Thank you. If there is a headline out of today's talk, I think it is that we're going to a special session, but that's not necessarily surprising or news to anyone at this point. We are out of time, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you to Representatives Price, Rose, Goldman, and Canales for joining us. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.